Jaya Gopi Janava Labha Girivaradari. Jaya Gopi Janava Labha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Rajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Shila Prabhupada Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladev Jaya Subhadra Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Shri Radhe.
So Hare Krishna Mataji, I am sharing the screen now. You can read from there.
Okay, you want me to read it, Prabhu? All right, so reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. Abai composed a Bengali poem, Vrindavan Bhajan. Its opening stanzas were especially self-reflective and personal. 1. I am sitting alone in Vrindavan Dham. In this mood, I am getting many realizations. I have my wife, sons, daughters, grandsons, everything, but I have no money, so they are fruitless glory. Krishna has shown me the naked form of material nature. By his strength, it has all become tasteless to me today. Yasyaham anu grinami harishye tadanam shanaye. I gradually take away all the wealth of those upon whom I am merciful. How was I able to understand this mercy of the all-merciful? 2. Everyone has abandoned me, seeing me penniless, wife, relatives, friends, brothers, everyone. This is misery, but it gives me a laugh. I sit alone and laugh. In this Maya samsara, whom do I really love? Where have my loving father and mother gone now? And where are all my elders who were my own folk? Who will give me news of them? Tell me who. All that is left of this family life is a list of names. 3. As the froth on the seawater mixes again in the sea, Maya Samsara's play is just like that. No one is mother or father or personal relative. Just like the sea foam, they remain but a short time. Just as the froth on seawater mixes again in the sea, the body made of 5 elements meets with destruction. How many bodies does the embodied soul take in this way? His relatives are all related merely to the temporal body. 4. But everyone is your relative, brother, on the spiritual platform. This relationship is not tinged with the smell of Maya. The Supreme Lord is the soul of everyone. In relation to him, everyone in the universe is the same. All your relatives, brother, all the billions of jivas, when seen in relation to Krishna, they are all in harmony. Forgetting Krishna, the jiva desires sense gratification, and as a result, he is firmly grasped by Maya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 22, Text 37. This chapter is entitled Prithu Maharaja's Meeting with the Kumaras. All right. Okay. Tatvam Narendra Jagatam Atatashtusham Cha Dehendriyasu Disha Natma Vir. Sorry, my light that's not very good here. Avritanam Yashetravita Patraya Hriti Vishvakti Vishadvi Pratyak Chakasti Bhagavam Stam Avehi Sosmi Tatvam Narendra Jagatam Atatashtashan Cha Dehendriyasu Dishanu Atmabir Avritanam Yashetravita Tapataya Hriti Vishvakavi Pratyak Chakasti Bhagavam Stan Avehi Sosmi Tatvam Narendra Jagatam Atatashtasam Cha Dehendriyasu Dishanatmapir Avritanam Yashetravita Pataya Hriti Vishvagavi Pratyak Chakasti Bhagavam Stam Avehi Sosmi. Tat, therefore, Tvam, you, Nara Indra, O best of kings, Jagatam, of the moving, Ata, therefore, Tashtusham, the immovable, Cha, also, Deha, body, Indriya, senses, Asu, life air, Dishana, by consideration, Atmabi, self-realization, Avritanam, those who are covered in that way, Yaha, one who, Kshetravit, knower of the field, Tapataya, by controlling, Shredi, within the heart, Vishvak, everywhere, Avihi, manifest, Pratyak, in every hair follicle, Chakasti, shining, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Tam, unto him, Avihi, try to understand, Sas, Asmi, I am that. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Sanat Kumar advised the king, therefore, my dear King Prithu, try to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is living within everyone's heart, along with the individual soul, in each and every body either moving or not moving. The individual souls are fully covered by the gross material body and subtle body made of the life air and intelligence. Purport. In this verse, it is specifically advised that instead of wasting time in the human form of life endeavouring for economic development and sense gratification, one should try to cultivate spiritual values by understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is existing with the individual soul within everyone's heart. The individual soul and the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Paramatma feature are both sitting within this body, which is covered by gross and subtle elements. To understand this is to attain actual spiritual culture. There are two ways of advancing in spiritual culture: by the method of the impersonalist philosophers and by devotional service. The impersonalist comes to the conclusion that he and the Supreme Spirit are one, whereas devotees or personalists realize the absolute truth by understanding that because the absolute truth is the supreme predominator and we living entities are predominated, our duty is to serve him. The Vedic injunctions say, Tat Tvam Asi, you are the same, and Soham, I am the same. The impersonalist conception of these mantras is that the Supreme Lord or the Absolute Truth and the living entity are one. But from the devotee's point of view, these mantras assert that both the Supreme Lord and ourselves are of the same quality. Tat Tvam Asi Yam Atma Brahma. Both the Supreme Lord and the living entity are spirit. Understanding this is self-realization. The human form of life is meant for understanding the Supreme Lord and oneself by spiritual cultivation of knowledge. One should not waste valuable time simply engaged in economic development and sense gratification. In this verse, the word Kshetravit is also important. This word is explained in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 2. Idam sariram kuntaya kshetram iti abhidhyate. This body is called Kshetra, the field of activities, and the proprietors of the body, the individual soul and the supersoul sitting within the body, are both called Kshetravit. But there is a difference between the two kinds of Kshetravit. One Kshetravit, or knower of the body, namely the Paramatma or the supersoul, is directing the individual soul. When we rightly take the direction of the supersoul, our life becomes successful. He is directing from within and from without. From within, he is directing as Chaita Guru, or the spiritual master sitting within the heart. Indirectly, he is also helping the living entity by manifesting himself as the spiritual master outside. In both ways, the Lord is giving directions to the living entity so that he may finish up his material activities and come back home, back to Godhead. The presence of the Supreme Soul and the individual soul within the body can be perceived by anyone by the fact that as long as the individual soul and the supersoul are both living within the body is always shining and fresh. But as soon as the supersoul and the individual soul give up possession of the gross body, it immediately decomposes. One who is spiritually advanced can understand the real difference between a dead body and a living body. In conclusion, one should not waste his time by so-called economic development and sense gratification, but should cultivate spiritual knowledge to understand the supersoul and the individual soul and their relationship. In this way, by advancement of knowledge, one can achieve liberation and the ultimate goal of life. It is said that if one takes to the path of liberation, even rejecting his so-called duties in the material world, he is not a loser at all. But a person who does not take to the path of liberation, yet carefully executes economic development and sense gratification, loses everything. Narada's statement before Vyasadeva is appropriate in this connection. Tyaktva sva dhammam charanam bhujam hariya bhajan apakvo ta patitato yadi yatra kva vabhadam abud amusyakim ko varta apto bhajatam sva dhammataha. Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 17. If a person, out of sentiment or for some other reason, takes to the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, and in due course of time does not succeed in coming to the ultimate goal of life, or falls down due to lack of experience, there is no loss. But for a person who does not take to devotional service, yet executes his material duties very nicely, there is no gain. Agyana Timanandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshum Litam Yena Prasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay. There's so much in this verse and purport. So I guess in terms of just situating ourselves in where we are in the Bhagavatam, for those that are just joining us. So Preaching Maharaj has been talking to the four Kumaras, namely Sanat Kumar, who is the one that has been speaking so far. So here he is. He's said, quite a few verses outlining the purpose of human life and the best way to utilize the human life, with some understanding around the do's and don'ts of life and the traps that we can get caught in while going through our material existence. So the different ways that we can get snared and entrapped and taken off the path. And then Sanat Kumar, this is one of his concluding verses, I understand. I'm just going to, where he's sort of making a summation of what he's been saying, and he's essentially reinforcing this idea that to try to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he's explaining that Supreme Personality of Godhead, as we know, travels as Paramatma, with the soul. And that the presence of Paramatma and the individual soul within this human body is what gives it life. And that when the super soul and the jiva, the soul, they leave this body, then the body decomposes. So he's explaining here that, my dear King Pri, to try to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is living within everyone's heart, along with the individual soul in each and every body, either moving or not moving. The individual souls are fully covered by the gross material body and subtle body made of the life air and intelligence. So not only in the moving bodies, but the non-moving bodies, so trees, grass. So all living entities here in the material world are accompanied by the super soul, by the Paramatma. And according to the life they've lived, according to the desires they've cultivated, according to the choices they've made, then we end up in different types of bodies. And Sanat Kumar, he explains that in earlier verses, that if we don't utilize our life to understand the personality of Godhead, to understand what it is that we're doing here in the first place, then material nature gives us different kinds of bodies where we no longer have that ability to question and understand and try and become free from the material world. So it behooves us to use our time in a way that is conducive towards freedom from the gross and subtle material body. And time's a really interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, there's so many ways of looking at time and of utilizing time and of not utilizing time in an appropriate way. And we can see that even when we're, making some material advancement or trying to move forward in our career or pay off a mortgage or whatever it may be, that time, it ticks away. You don't get a moment of time back. It's a constantly moving thing. But one of the tricks of Maya, one of the tricks of material energy, is that even though we understand this, that each time, each moment we have, we can't get back, we remain kind of tricked in our mind. So the nature of our mind, of our brain, or our mind, it gets caught in future or past thinking. So it's worrying about the past or it's worrying about the future. It's caught up in things that happened yesterday or things that happened last week or things that happened 10 years ago. So it's even difficult to be fully present in the moment and to understand actually, time in the moment. Like even that in of itself is a bit of an art form because the mind drags us here and there. And, maybe throughout your day today, you can and look at that, just see where it is that your mind has you, worrying about this, thinking about that, got to do this, got to do that, coming up with your to-do list, or, thinking about what that devotee or that person said to you, or if my husband hadn't said it in that way, or, what about this devotee over there? I'm worried about their situation, or whatever it may be. The mind's always grabbing us and taking us somewhere that's not present orientated. So that's one of the tricks of time, is that it's very difficult to be aware of time because our time gets snatched by so many things. So part of the cultivation of spiritual values, of spiritual culture, is to bring that present moment awareness to meditating on Krishna. So Krishna is in our heart, Krishna is everywhere and everything, and Krishna is fully independent in the spiritual realm. And by cultivating that knowledge and connection of Krishna in every moment, or, training ourselves to, in some way, no matter what our external circumstance, the mind and the intelligence, the meditation is always going on. So watch what we're meditating on. See if we're getting caught up in past, future thinking, or, worries about paying bills or this or that. We've got to make some time. We've got to be responsible. So we've got to do our material duties nicely. We don't want to be irresponsible. However, we want to see that the mind is trying to focus on Krishna and develop knowledge about Krishna. So as Sanat Kumar says here, we're trying to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is living within everyone's heart. And Krishna within the heart will help us in this endeavor because it's what he wants. It's what he wants so much for us, is to come back and to be with him and to be conscious of him. So this is the difference between impersonalist developing values, spiritual values, cultivating spiritual knowledge from an impersonal understanding versus a personal understanding. So theoretically, we can read the books, we can understand our position as a spirit soul, transcendental to the physical body. As Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, we're struggling with the 6 senses, which include the mind. So philosophically, we can understand that. But what we're urged to do here is to go further than that and to actually try and understand Krishna, to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that our relationship with Krishna, the way that we are to relate with Krishna is through service. How can I serve you, Krishna? How can I serve your devotees? How can I serve the Paramatma in another person's heart? How can I serve Krishna in every situation? How can I serve Krishna if I don't know Krishna? So therefore we seek knowledge of Krishna. We read about Krishna. We hear from others that are more advanced in understanding Krishna. We serve those that are more advanced in understanding Krishna, because that's Krishna's system of how to develop more knowledge of him, is to have a mode of service. So Prabhupada is encouraging us here in this purport that it's specifically advised that instead of wasting time in the human form of life, endeavoring for economic development and sense gratification, one should try to cultivate spiritual values by understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is existing with the individual soul within everyone's heart. The individual soul and the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Paramatma feature are both sitting within this body, which is covered by gross and subtle elements. To understand this is to attain actual spiritual culture. So the impersonalist comes to the conclusion that he and the Supreme Spirit are one, whereas devotees or personalists realize the absolute truth by understanding that because the absolute truth is the supreme predominator, and we living entities are predominated, our duty is to serve him. So understanding this is self-realization, and the human form of life is meant for understanding the Supreme Lord and oneself by spiritual cultivation of knowledge. So and we were, as we were reading in Prabhupada Lilamrita before we started on reading this verse, Prabhupada's beautiful poem in terms of understanding and reflecting on the situation that he found himself in Vrindavan. So he left his wife, his sons, his daughters, his grandchildren. He left everything, and then he was reflecting, well, actually, everybody is my brother, is my sister. You know, we're all related on the platform of spirit soul. So Prabhupada so very beautifully demonstrated an incredible renunciation and realization of the absolute truth, which, you know, we don't want to imitate that level of renunciation and realization, but we do want to beg for that mercy and serve in a way that we get one drop or one teeny tiny, like part of a drop of that level of love for Krishna, that when you are in full knowledge and full knowledge of Krishna and love for Krishna, then everything becomes so clear, so apparent. Anyway, so coming back to this point of time. So we want to be aware of time and look at how time affects us. And time is an interesting thing. So you've got your daily time, you've got the seasons of time, you've got since time immemorial having this material experience of going through different bodies and different countries in the world and different species of life and different planets in the universe. I was at a very nice talk last night at the Loft by Chandidas Prabhu, my godbrother, and he was talking about the understanding of time in terms of cyclical or linear. So many ancient cultures understand, and spiritual cultures understand, that there's cycles of time, you know, like there's different yugas, there's different months of the year, there's different cycles of the soul going through different bodies, whereas the Western current understanding is time is very linear. So we started with the Big Bang, and then we sort of developed where we are now, peak of, you know, material society. So understanding time and the cyclical nature of time, and that time is something we can't get back. So using our time in a way that is conducive for not only having a healthy human experience within this life. It's not that we want to be acting on a platform that we're not yet fully realized. But we want to be responsible human beings, take care of what it is that we need to take care of. And utilize time internally or externally, organize our lives in a way that are conducive for that gradual development of spiritual culture. And the other sort of point that I was thinking of with this purport is the self-interest. So actually, we're generally very good at this self-interest. And if we look at society in general, that's what most people are wanting out of life. There's some self-interest. Decisions are made on what is best for what's good for us. The missing bit, which Prabhupada has so wonderfully given us through Srimad Bhagavatam and through this knowledge that he's brought to the West, the missing bit is we don't understand who is the self and how to act in the best interests of the self. So Sanat Kumar, he has these amazing verses here where he's talking to Prithu Maharaj around what is real self-interest and how to actually take care of the self, because it's naturally what we're inclined to do. Self-interest is an important part of life, but we're just missing that bit of, okay, what is the self and what is in real self-interest? So the general understanding that we learn through life is self-interest means, you've got to have enough money, you've got to have a nice lifestyle, you want a nice partner, you want nice children, you want nice car, you want people to like you, you want to have, name, fame, all of those things. So there's a nice verse by Sanat Kumar to Prithu Maharaj that was a few verses ago, a few texts ago. But there is no stronger distraction to one's self-interest than thinking other subject matters to be more pleasing than one's self-realization. So it's actually a really deep point. I think it's really worth kind of sitting on that and really contemplating that and how that applies to our individual lives. There is no stronger obstruction to one's self-interest than thinking other subject matters to be more pleasing than one's self-realization. And, just notice how the mind gets hooked with so many ideas around what it is that we need to be happy, what it is that we need to be fulfilled. And, we know spiritual life's the best thing for us. We know what the Bhagavatam tells us. We know what Guru Sadhu and Shastra says. And yet we can always come up with that, oh yeah, but, or in my situation, or if I just get this, then I'll be able to be more sincere in my spiritual life. But actually, Sanat Kumar, he's letting us know that this is a real obstruction. This is thinking. So it starts in the mind. It starts with ideas. So notice that thinking, catch that thinking, and push back a little bit. Say, well, actually, there's nothing more pleasing than my self-realization. So if I can arrange my life, my day, my brain, my mind in a way that self-realization becomes the most important part of my consciousness, then I will be completely satisfied. I will be completely happy. I will be completely peaceful. So that's the bit where society and ourselves in our daily struggle for existence we can get a bit caught. We can think, oh, well, that's for somebody else, or that's for when I'm old, or that's for when I'm leaving my body. But actually, that there is no stronger obstruction to one's self-interest than thinking other subject matters to be more pleasing than one's self-realization. So if we kind of take that idea and we link that, so self-interest, time, and knowledge of the Supreme Absolute, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We kind of take these three things from this verse, from this text, from this explanation, this purport by Srila Prabhupada. They're quite nice meditations for our day and our week ahead. To be conscious of time, catch where your mind is. Is it thinking of the past? Is it thinking of the future? Is it meditating on Krishna? Do you have moments of clarity when you are hearing the holy name, where you are thinking about the Lord in your heart? Or is it you're getting pulled this way and that way constantly? So just notice it, be gentle with it. Don't want to beat ourselves up in our minds. It's just a kind of a practice of noticing, where does our mind go? And being aware of this concept that our time gets stolen from us because of where our mind goes. It's pulling us into the past and present. Past and future, rather than in the present. And this idea of self-interest, that you want to act in a way that we have the choice to act in a way that entangles us or that liberates us. So that's a moment-to-moment affair. How we choose to act. How is it that we use our time? Are we using time to move towards Krishna, away from the material energy? Or are we using our time to move away from Krishna and become entangled in the material energy? That is the choice that we have moment to moment. And as Sanat Kumar explains, that we want to utilize our time and our interest in understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So understanding Krishna is a very it's a very wonderful thing to do, because we all have different ways that we're going to want to understand Krishna. We have different ways things that we're going to lean into that are more in line with our nature and our level of interest. But reading about Krishna, hearing about Krishna's pastimes, hearing about how Krishna is described by his great devotees, by those that have knowledge of Krishna, serving devotees, being engaged in devotional service, cleaning the temple, dressing the deities, cooking for the Lord, going on Harinam, book distribution. There's so many ways that we can understand or connect with Krishna through service to Krishna, through service to his devotees. Of course, hearing, chanting, remembering, it all begins with the holy name. So chanting Hare Krishna, trying to hear Krishna through his names. So Krishna, he's there in our heart. He's hearing our endeavors. He's seeing how much it is we're trying to understand him and learn about him. And the more we learn about and understand him, then the more likely we are to want to engage in his service and to glorify Krishna and to understand our relationship to Krishna. Our relationship is one of service. We're not the predominator. We're not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're jivas that have a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So these are these sort of three kind of key themes that I've been talking about today. So it's time, self-interest, and understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course, as Prabhupada writes in this purport, there's no loss or diminution for any type of sincere endeavor to understand Krishna, which is very satisfying, because as we'll all experience over time, you can see that some souls will take up this practice of cultivation of spiritual knowledge, this practice of trying to understand Krishna, and then for some reason or other they don't remain on the path, or they'll give it up, or they drift away and become caught up with other things. So if a person out of sentiment or for some other reason takes to the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, and in due course of time does not succeed in coming to the ultimate goal of life, or falls down due to lack of experience, there's no loss. But for a person who does not take to devotional service, yet executes his material duties very nicely, there is no gain. So that's should help us to feel really supported and valued in terms of our spiritual endeavors, no matter how big or small they may be, is that there's no loss. Taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, trying to understand, trying to develop knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there's no loss. You can't lose. It's a win-win. So I'm going to see what the time is. Yeah. So I'm going to conclude there. I'm just wondering, I'll read the the translation one more time for this verse, and then I'll see if there's any questions. Sanat Kumar advised the king, therefore, my dear King Prithu, try to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is living within everyone's heart, along with the individual soul in each and every body, either moving or non-moving, or not moving. The individual souls are fully covered by the gross material body and subtle body made of the life, air, and intelligence. So any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
So, such a beautiful text containing so many instructions and importance of, as you mentioned, about time, this your self-interest, self-realization, and how to utilize that time in a proper way, and the knowledge of this Supreme Personality of Godhead. All this is very nicely explained, especially Prabhupada said, do not waste your time simply by engaged in economic development and sense gratification. And that is the main focus where we are actually distorted. We are very much interested in self-interest rather in self-realization. And that is where we are wasting our time. So here, Sanat Kumar is advising us so that we don't waste our time. We straight away come to the point that Lord is there within your heart. Only you have to recognize that. He is in the form of Chaitya Guru, and outside is a spiritual master. So both way you are given chance to understand him and get connected. So don't waste your time, just utilize and understand that self-interest is not the way of life. Only self-realization is the goal of life, and go for it.
And that the real self-interest is self-realization.
Yeah. We have to just change the mode.
Yeah.
Engrossed with the materialistic things, we forget that the word self-realization is there. We are very much interested in the self-interest, and that's what pulls us back to understand self-realization. And Prabhupada has given, and in your explanation, you have explained how this same person is inside, but you have to recognize them. And that is the process of by devotional service. So not to waste your time, just be on the service to the Lord, everything will fall in place. That's why Prabhupada has organized ISKCON in such a way. In every moment you have an opportunity to get connected with the Lord. In every service He has given us to do. So, and that's Narad Muni was also explaining the same way to Vyasdev, that 1.5.17. Don't worry, if you are not fully successful to get to the Lord in this lifetime, still you are beneficial. You are not going to lose, because you have understood the difference between self-realization and self-interest. So that is very important for all of us to understand what is these two things actually meaningful, and that way we can advance. So this is purely as Bhakti Misra Gyan. So that reminds us to differentiate between the self-interest and self-realization. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Anything else? All right. Well, I'll leave everyone to have a lovely day meditating on these points.
Hare
Krishna.
Sorry to thank you so much for your wonderful class, as always, with your wonderful realizations. So just one thing which struck me, So while you were giving the class, you mentioned those points where you're talking about like what is the use of gaining the entire world if you're lost our soul. That's very very nicely put that. And at the same time, you mentioned not being irresponsible, not being irresponsible. So I just wondering, like, how do we get that balance? Like, one thing is balance between spiritual and so-called material, or material and spiritual. How to get that balance between the two, and also like how to address the situations where we think we are addressing our self-interest, as you said, self-interest, which is the same as self-realization, but that thing is causing a disturbance around us. Like I can just, it's causing a disturbance to others, or it is causing trouble to others, or it's causing. So I'm thinking I'm advancing, I'm trying to serve my self-interest, but if it's causing a disturbance around, so I'm just thinking how to balance that, Mataji. Any advice or tips there?
Very good question. It's an ongoing thing, isn't it? Getting the right balance. Yeah, I mean, I think coming back, so this idea of jnana means knowledge of self-realization. Vijnana means realized knowledge of self-realization. So getting more, the practical application of that knowledge is what Vijnana refers to. So in that context, I think sometimes we can get a sort of a jnana, a knowledge. Okay, this is what it means to be self-realized. I'm going to apply that. And then for whatever reason, it doesn't work because it might disrupt others in our family, or it might disrupt our economic situation, or there's so many factors. So I think a good rule of thumb with that is this Guru Sadhu Shastra, like these kind of checkpoints, because sometimes we can get a little bit, we think, yep, I've got this, or, and then, oh, that didn't work. Oh, now I'm going to give it up altogether. So with the Guru Sadhu Shastra, working in with devotees that know your situation, and perhaps a little bit more advanced on the path, they can give some kind of clarification and understanding, and some sort of fine-tuning in terms of getting that sweet spot. And in saying that, getting the right balance of our material and spiritual duties is an ongoing phenomena. It's never just like, okay, I've got it now, or I've got it perfect. It's sort of a day-to-day affair. But I think the most conducive way of doing that is to seek the guidance of others around us and the feedback. And then as we progress in our bhakti, the super soul, well, actually the super soul is always giving us nudges and ideas, but we might become a little bit more clear of when it is the super soul giving us that nudge or that idea, or pushing us in a particular direction. So I think that's kind of the sort of the best I can do in terms of my understanding, or how I understand it, and try to practice it a bit myself, is you check in, you get that sort of Guru Sadhu Shastra sort of check in, and look at how well you're arranging your life so that you can function in your service and in your sadhana, sort of as the key, sort of the baseline of our spiritual development, is so that you've got your hearing and your chanting as the baseline. And if you're arranging your life with that, then things will become more clear of how to manage the other things. Does that make sense? Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dhanapram. Thank
Krishna.
you very much for a wonderful class. It's a long purpose, but you managed to analyze it very nicely. I got a question regarding grace of the Lord and our personal endeavor. In this verse, we say we have to endeavor for self-interest, all the devotional service. How much does the grace of the Lord place? So in Christianity, they place more emphasis on the grace than doing work or endeavor to do self-realization. So how does grace place in our development or spiritual progress?
Nice. Well, I think that how we're told that every step we take towards Krishna, and sometimes it says he takes 10 steps towards us, other times it takes 100 steps towards us. So I think you know, and in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna explains that every endeavor is covered with some smoke, you know, there's some impurity in terms of our endeavor, but that the grace kind of makes up what it is that we lack. So Krishna carries what we lack. He preserves what we have, and he carries what we lack. So when we're making sincere efforts, even it can be sincerity in the heart. It might be that externally we might not be able to do something, but if internally we're praying and we're begging Krishna, that that grace, he will turn to us and he will give us the inspiration and the intelligence to come to him. So I think if we think of it in that way, that every step we take towards Krishna, he'll take at least 10 steps towards us. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question?
Thank you, Mataji. So like grace and our self-surrender are like complements each other. So you just can't rely on grace all the time, do what you want.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's like in any relationship that we have. If it's just a take relationship and there's no giving, it's not going to be a very satisfying or long-term relationship. Every relationship is give and take. And in our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, obviously he has a lot more power than we do. So if we think of that verse, if one offers me a leaf, fruit, flower, or water, I will accept it. So Krishna is very gracious, but the living entity, you know, knows we don't have the same power and opulence as the Lord. We don't have that ability to give that, but whatever we have, we give to Krishna. We understand that he's the proprietor, he's the Lord. So there's it's that consciousness. And that relying on the grace of Krishna, I guess it's more around, yes, if we are turning towards Krishna and making endeavors, he will turn towards us and help.
Thank you, Mataji. I think that makes sense. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All right. Well, thank you.
Vanchakalpatarayasya kripa
patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti.
Rasayatra Mataji ki jai.
Jai.
Anande. All blessed to assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.